I would inject it into my bloodstream. I would eat this book if I could. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video. Happy Emily Henry month to all who celebrate. Emily Henry's newest book, Great Big Beautiful Life, comes out later this month, and I am so excited. I feel like I have been relatively late to the party when it comes to Emily Henry. I discovered her books a couple of years ago, I think, and I was absolutely hooked from the beginning, which is weird because I don't typically consider myself a romance reader. I don't read a massive amount of romance, especially not like romance that has any kind of level of spice in it. But I do still read it from time to time, if I want something that is relatively unserious and just a bit of entertainment. And I think when it comes to romance writers who are working right now, Emily Henry is definitely among the best. I don't know what it is that makes her books so amazing. I think it's a combination of many different things that she just does incredibly well. But yeah, I can't get enough of her stuff. And the thought that later this month, in less than 3 weeks, there is going to be a new book of hers just out in the public that I can read is so exciting. I can't wait. But we do still have a little bit of time until that day arrives. And I am coming off of the back of some rather serious books that I've been reading. I have been going down a little bit of a literary rabbit hole for a while. Like I think pretty much since the start of this year, I've been reading a lot of pretty sad books, which has been fun. Like they've been good books. I found some absolute bangers. I found like my first 5-star read of the year last month was Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. It was phenomenal, but again, so sad. And I think I hit a bit of a breaking point when last month I read A Little Life, which if you have seen my previous video, you will know I did not have a good time with it. And then I have literally just finished reading Sunrise on the Reaping, which is an absolute emotional roller coaster. And yeah, I need 2 to 5 business days to recover from it. So yeah, it's been a lot of pretty serious, pretty sad books. And I think right now I could do with I think I deserve a little bit of a palate cleanser, a bit of fluffy romance just to tide me over. So that's where this video comes in. I thought it would be a fun idea just in preparation for the release of Emily Henry's next book, just to go back to her previous books and read them back to back. But we're going to go in chronological order by publication. So that means I'm going to start off with actually the only other book other than Great Big Beautiful Life that I have not read of Emily Henry's, which is her first one, and that is, of course, Beach Read. But yeah, this is Emily Henry's first adult novel. And considering the last book I read by her was Happy Place, which is relatively recent, not that recent, but fairly recent. It will be really interesting to read this one for the first time and see the beginnings of her writing and compare it and see kind of how far she's come as a writer. I'm very excited. I've heard really good things about this. I've seen it on a lot of people's kind of favorite books. I've seen it on the top of a lot of people's rankings of Emily Henry's books, so I do have pretty high expectations. And who knows, maybe by the end of this video I will have some kind of ranking of her books, having read them and have them like fresh in my mind, and maybe this book will be at the top of that list. I already know it's going to be so difficult to rank them from like worst to best because I already know that I enjoyed most of them. So yeah, that's going to be a very difficult task for me at the end of this video. But I'm going to start off with this one, and I will see you at some point with an update. Hello, it's been a few days, but we have finished the first book of this video, which is, of course, Beach Read by Emily Henry. Yeah, I've been in tech rehearsals for a show that I'm doing this week. So I've been insanely busy, and I'm actually going to head out fairly soon to the dress rehearsal because we open tomorrow. So yeah, been very busy. I haven't had a lot of time to read, which is why this has taken a few days. If I hadn't had anything to do, and I'd just been able to like veg on the sofa and read, this would have taken me like 2 days max. But yeah, it's taken me a little bit longer than that, which I think is somewhat a blessing in disguise because it has given me kind of time to fully process this book and, give comprehensive thoughts. So, in this book, we follow our main girl who's called January, and she is a romance author who is suffering from immense writer's block. And not only that, but she has been grieving the death of her father. And her dad left behind a house that is on a lake. I think it's one of the Great Lakes. I don't really know American geography. I don't actually know where this book is set. I'm guessing Michigan, which is I'm pretty sure on the Great Lakes. Genuinely no idea. But yeah, it's a house that is on a lake that has a beach. Hence the title Beach Read. Um so yeah, he's left her a house, and he has also left behind the slightly unwelcome news that he has been cheating on January's mother for a few years. So yeah, that is a lot to unpack. But January is broke, so she decides to move in temporarily to this second house, just to pack up all the stuff and eventually sell it, but also use it as a space to write the book that she needs to write. She then discovers upon moving in that she is living next door to her former academic rival, called Augustus Everett, um, who she went to college with, and they were kind of the top two people in their writing class, and he's become like a best-selling author of depressing literary fiction. So obviously the two of them become friends, and in order for them to kind of both break out of their respective writer's blocks, they decide to have a bet to swap genres. So Gus would write a romance, and January would write some kind of depressing literary fiction novel. Um, and yeah, try and see if that works for them. See who gets published first, I guess. And it's a romance, so obviously they're gonna get together. Sparks are gonna fly. There are more twists and things that make it more complicated. Again, obviously. But yeah, that is pretty much the concept. And I enjoyed this one. I did. I wasn't really sure what to expect because, even though I have read Emily Henry's other books, this is her first adult romance. So I don't know. I was kind of expecting it to like be a little bit more kind of fluffy than her other books, and maybe a little bit more kind of superficial, I guess. Because I don't know, she was still honing her craft or whatever. But I was very happy to be proven wrong in my expectations. In fact, I would go so far to say as this book dives into some pretty sensitive and deep issues, more so than some of her other stuff. So you have the theme of infidelity, which January has very much been affected by, but also Gus has been affected by as well. You also have the theme of grief, which is discussed in a lot of detail in this book as well. Those are the two kind of major themes, issues that are discussed, but there are a lot of other kind of ideas and things as well. There's a lot of discussion kind of randomly about cults and the experience of being in a cult, escaping from a cult. It's part of like research that they do for their books. But yeah, I felt like for the most part that was talked about in a fairly respectful way, apart from one scene which I did very much take issue with. And I'm not going to mention which one because I don't want this review to contain spoilers, but yeah, looking back, it was a bit like, oh, okay, that's questionable. And I feel like maybe people who read this book will know what I'm talking about. possibly. But yeah, the characters as individuals were really well written, really fleshed out. They both had issues outside of the central romance, which I really like in a romance. I think Emily Henry does that very well, like creating kind of fleshed out characters with their own storylines and their own problems. But then as a pair, like when they come together, they have insane chemistry. I thought the banter, the dialogue in this was fantastic. Some of the best banter I read, really. It really kind of had the extremes of emotions. Like there were parts that were very funny and there were parts that were also very sad. So yeah, overall I did think this was a solid book. There is a kind of major kind of revelation reveal plot twist towards the end that I think should have been a bigger deal. It does have something to do with the theme of infidelity, and for that reason, I thought it should have maybe affected both January and Gus in a bigger way. It felt very kind of brushed off when actually I feel like I should have been like, oh wow, that is huge. Like I feel like that reveal should have made at least January, if not Gus, more hesitant to fully enter into a romance. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have got together at all because they absolutely should have done at the end. Like I don't hate happy endings, but I prefer my endings to be a bit more realistic. And I think I don't know, that reveal just felt kind of brushed off and yeah, I feel like it should have been talked about a little bit more than it was. I don't know, it is just my opinion. But it did to me feel a little bit out of character that January didn't kind of freak out at that reveal. Yeah, I'm trying really hard not to spoil it, but those are my opinions. Those are my thoughts. So yeah, Beach Read. I am gonna rate this a solid 4 stars. I think that's a good starting point. I think yeah, it's a good book. It's a solid romance. Packed an emotional punch for sure. Yeah, despite my kind of 2 or 3 issues with the book, I still enjoyed it. So that is book one done. Very happy. I'm not romanced out yet, which is good because we still have a long way to go. I am going to move straight on and make a start on You and Me on Vacation. This is Emily Henry's second romance book. This was actually the first book by Emily Henry that I read ever, like 2 years ago. And I don't remember much about the plot, but I do remember really enjoying it. Um, but yeah, this got me hooked on Emily Henry straight away. So I think that's a good sign. I think I'm gonna reread this and enjoy it just as much. Hello, last night I finished reading You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. Its American title is People We Meet on Vacation. I personally I prefer this title. I think it fits slightly better because the story really is about kind of the main couple. So our main people are Poppy and Alex, and they are best friends. They've been friends for about 12 years. And once a year, every summer, they go on a vacation together. And Poppy is a travel writer. She is a journalist for like a travel magazine. So um, that means she kind of gets paid to go places and write about them. And Alex is a high school teacher and a short story writer. Um, and yeah, they go on vacation, except 2 years ago when they went on vacation, something happened that kind of caused them to break up the friendship and not speak to each other for 2 years. And this year they decide to go on one last trip to Palm Springs in California for Alex's brother's wedding and try and work everything out. And all the while, kind of throughout this kind of present day timeline, you get flashbacks to all of the previous summers, um, all the way back to like the start of their their friendship, which is really nice. I like the fact that you get to see this kind of foundation on which the friendship was built. I think it gives the friendship a lot of credibility. The fact that you get to see why they're friends, and yeah, I get to see their friendship grow and develop into something really kind of special and something potentially more than friendship. So yeah, I really enjoyed their friendship. I love the whole concept of this book. I do enjoy a kind of non-chronological narration style. I like a kind of dual timeline, kind of flashbacks, that kind of stuff. I think it is really interesting if it is done well. That is, and I think it is done pretty well in this book. But yeah, I like the concept. I liked the execution. I feel like this is possibly the most fluffy of Emily Henry's books. Like, it doesn't go particularly deep into like childhood trauma. Like, Beach Read was pretty deep, like unexpectedly dark. I was kind of expecting it to have a similar feel to this book, but it was more similar, I'd say, to like Book Lovers, for example. This one I feel is a little bit on the lighter side. It's kind of the happy vacation, like summer read. If you were to picture like a typical summer beach read, you wouldn't think of beach read, you'd think of this one, ironically. So yeah, it is definitely more light-hearted, but I still feel like the characters were three-dimensional and developed and relatable. I did kind of find Poppy a little bit annoying. She is very, very extroverted. I would liken her to Rachel Bloom's character in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Like the fact that she doesn't really have much of a filter and kind of expects, not quite expects people to burst into song without warning, but like she kind of has that very much main character energy. I did really like Alex, on the other hand. I thought he was a really interesting kind of foil to Poppy. I thought they were very kind of opposites attract, which is a dynamic I really do like when it's executed well. And I think it is executed really well in this one because you can absolutely tell that they are very close friends. They have a very long, very deep friendship with a lot of inside jokes and banter. Again, the banter in this is fantastic. They just crack some really funny jokes. I don't laugh out loud very often at books, but I did laugh out loud with this one. Something I felt was lacking from this book, and also to a slightly lesser extent lacking in Beach Read, was the female friendship. Like, Emily Henry writes female friendship really well, and you can see that from her later books. In Happy Place especially, I think she does a really, really good job of writing complex and deep female friendship. And you do get the friendship angle of this, but it's just a friendship between a man and a woman, which eventually turns into more than friendship. I don't think that's a spoiler because like it is literally, it's friends to lovers. It's a rom-com. What do you expect? But yeah, in this book there is a female best friend for Poppy. Her name is Rachel. And you do see her a couple of times, and you know, she's on the phone to Poppy a couple of times as well. But she doesn't really have much of a character. She's more of a plot device for Poppy to like bounce ideas off of. Like, there isn't really any kind of substance to their friendship. It's more like Rachel's just there to be like, I support you. I'm here for you. And that's it. And I also get the same feeling in Beach Read with, what's January's friend's name? Shardy. January's best friend Shardy, who we do see, and I feel like there is a little bit more substance to their friendship because Shardy as a character has a little bit more to work with. She does have some kind of a romance arc in the background. She just kind of turns up at the end after the third act breakup and is like, I support you. Even though it's like, does she? Because she literally blew off her plans to go and visit January 4th of July just to go and meet the parents of this guy that she's just started dating. Like that. Honestly, January is a better person than me because if my best friend tried to do that to me, we would be having words. Like, January is grieving the death of her father. She's been left by herself at this lake house. She's broke. she obviously like she needs some support, and you're gonna ditch her to get off with this guy that you've literally just started dating. Like that doesn't seem like a very good friend, if I'm honest. That was another thing that I think I forgot to mention in my review for Beach Read, but yeah, it has been bugging me ever since, and I've gotten it off my chest now. But yeah, I feel like the female friendships in these first two books feel kind of superficial. There isn't a lot of substance to them, and it's Emily Henry's first two adult romance novels. She's obviously focusing very much in on the romance aspect of it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just reading her next books, where the female friendship side of things really starts to develop. Because Emily Henry does that aspect of her books really really well. So yeah, that was something that I felt was missing in this book. But yeah, that's the rant over. Overall, like despite that probably very minor criticism, I did enjoy this. I really really enjoyed it. It's a solid 4-star read. Another one. I feel like maybe a slightly higher 4-star than Beach Read. But yeah, it's a really solid book, a very fun romance. Honestly, the perfect thing for me to be reading during a show week where I don't have the brain power for much else. Like, I'm still doing shows and I'm about to head off for my last 2-show day. And the fact that I managed to finish a book in a show week is honestly pretty impressive. But yeah, that is you and me on vacation. I'm going to move straight onto book lovers. I say I'm going to move straight onto it, but I'm literally going for a 2-show day and then possibly an art party afterwards. So I don't think I'm going to get much time to read today. But yeah, at some point, I'm going to move on to book lovers. Emily Henry's third romance book. I remember really enjoying this. Um, and that's about it. Yeah, I feel like everyone who is familiar with Emily Henry in this book absolutely swoons over the guy. Um, I I don't remember him being particularly special, but like I don't know. I don't remember much. But yeah, I will let you know my thoughts. I have just finished reading Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is a small town romance kind of rivals slash annoyances to lovers book. We follow Nora, our main girl, who is this cutthroat literary agent. She's a complete workaholic. She's based in New York. She loves her job. Her job is almost the most important thing in her life, but she's a workaholic, which means that in recent times she has been very unlucky in love. But the one thing that she loves more than her job is her little sister Libby, and Libby decides to take them both on vacation for a month. Because she knows how hard Nora has been working, and she takes them to this little town in South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the Carolinas, and it's called Sunshine Falls, which is a name, definitely, but it is supposed to be the setting for this book that Nora has just agented, that has just come out, and it's like a big bestseller. But this town is tiny. It's kind of dead. There's not a massive amount going on, but it being a small town, you kind of get to know everyone very quickly, and there are quite a few kind of colorful characters. And Libby and Nora expect it to be kind of your kind of cliche small town vibe. Have the small town romance experience. But on pretty much their first day there, Nora bumps into a face from her past. This guy called Charlie, who is an editor at a publishing house, and they have a little bit of a rivalry going on, I think. Well, he's described, and I quote from the back, as Nora's work nemesis. Um, but I really don't think it's that deep. Like, they meet once in the prologue, and they don't really hit it off, and Nora holds like this perpetual grudge against him for like the rest of the time, because this meeting was about this book that's set in Sunshine Falls that that Nora has just published, and Charlie did not like it. He passed on the book, but it has become like an instant bestseller. So, Nora was right about it. But she's like very protective over this book, and she doesn't like the fact that Charlie didn't like it. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a somewhat one-sided grudge. Like I don't think it's that deep, and that's one of my complaints about the book is the fact that I didn't I didn't really get that whole kind of work nemesis thing that the back of this book at least is trying to push. Like, I don't know. I don't think it was that deep. They met once and they had a disagreement, and that was it. Like, I wouldn't go so far as to say this was like rivals to lovers. It's definitely not enemies to lovers. I would say it's probably more annoyances to lovers. But even then, like, they get past the annoyances part very quickly. But yeah, the plots from there. Nora and Louis spend a month in this small town. Nora and Charlie can't seem to stay away from each other. There's a small business that needs saving. Lots of colorful characters. Yeah, it's your typical small town book. And yeah, overall, I did really like this book. I remember loving it when I read it last year before last, at some point. And yeah, the feelings are pretty much the same, despite the fact that I didn't quite get that connection between Nora and Charlie. I felt like that was very much a tell, not show, rather than show, don't tell. Like, we are told several times over that Charlie is Nora's work nemesis, but we aren't really shown it outside of the one interaction they have in the prologue. It like I don't think that they actually interact with each other at all between that first meeting in the prologue and them kind of bumping into each other in the actual like book when Nora was already on holiday. So yeah, maybe if they'd had like a slightly more extended rivalry kind of from the beginning, because I do think that the grudge that Nora has against Charlie is very one-sided. And yeah, I don't think it's that deep. But once you get past that main part of it, like with the actual romance once it starts, I do think that Nora and Charlie have some pretty good chemistry. Um, they work very well together, and I liked their storyline. And I also think that as individual characters, they were very developed, very kind of three-dimensional. They both have kind of obligations to their families. They both suffer very much from older sibling syndrome. Um, and yeah, they feel kind of obligated to take care of their families because of that. And that leads me to my favorite thing about this book, which is Nora's relationship with her sister, Libby. Like, they have a very, very close relationship with each other. Ever since the death of their mother, they have only really had each other to depend on, and Nora has been there very much taking care of Libby for pretty much her entire life. And that experience from a very early age has kind of informed their relationship with each other. Even now, when they're both kind of grown adults and they can, be independent from each other, Nora still feels that urge to take care of Libby, very much so. Even when Libby doesn't necessarily want to be taken care of by Nora. Yeah, it's a very complex relationship, but it's a very kind of strong bond they have with each other, which I loved reading about. I think Libby is a very cool character. She's one of my favorites in the book. She has her own stuff that's going on. She goes through her own character arc. She's very developed in herself. I think this is the first book out of the ones that I've read in this video that really takes kind of the female best friend, even though, they're sisters, but Libby is pretty much a best friend to Nora. She takes the female best friend and gives her like a fully developed character arc, and her own story, which I really like to see because it does kind of make the relationship with the main character a lot more complex and interesting to read. So, yeah, that was my favorite part of the book. And I think that's about it, I think. So, yeah, overall, I did still have a couple of issues with it, but I still really enjoyed reading it. I'd say the second half was more enjoyable than the first. The first I did kind of struggle to get into, I think because of that kind of lack of connection between Nora and Charlie. But the second half I absolutely whiz through because the plot starts picking up, you really start to get a good kind of romance between the two main characters. Um yeah. So I definitely think this is still worth reading. Not quite sure what rating I'm going to give it or where it sits in my ranking quite yet, but yeah, I'm still having fun. And now that I've finished Book Lovers, I can now officially say that I am over halfway through my rereads before I get to Great Big Beautiful Life, which releases in like a week, which is wild. I am still insanely excited, and I am gonna try and get through the last two books before Great Big Beautiful Life comes out. So I better start reading, and we're on to the hardbacks. We got Happy Place next, and this is my favorite Emily Henry book, at least so far. I read this last year, and it ended up on my list of my best books of the year. I absolutely loved it. So this is the book I've been waiting to get to because I can't wait to reread this, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm pretty confident that I will enjoy this just as much as I did on my first read. I love this book. Now, if I'm honest, after finishing Book Lovers, I was a little nervous to go back and reread this book because I loved this book so much when I read it last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. And then when I reread Book Lovers, I ended up not loving it as much as I remember. Like I kept kind of, I don't know, identifying problems I had with it that I didn't really notice the first time around. And I was very scared that the same was going to happen with this book. And I wasn't ready for that because I love this book. So thank God I read this and I actually ended up loving it somehow even more than I did the first time around. In this book, we follow Harriet, who every year she goes on holiday to this big house in Maine along with her best friends. And they spend the week there, and it's kind of a big tradition for all of them because, they live across the country from each other, and it's kind of pretty much the only time they get to really hang out together now that they have left college. They pretty much all met in college, but they've kind of gone on to different careers and lives and stuff. So they meet up once every summer in this beach house, and everything's fine and dandy. Except this year, she arrives, and the news is broken that the beach house is being sold, and this is going to be their last year there. And just throw an even bigger spanner in the works, guess who is also there when Harriet arrives? Her fiance Win, except he's not her fiance. They broke up 6 months ago and never told their friends. And now they have to pretend like they're still together just to, not ruin this final last hurrah in the beach house before it gets sold. It's it's a lot. There's a bit of fake dating going on. There's a second chance romance. It's kind of told in a dual timeline. So you have the present day timeline in, the last holiday they have in the beach house. And then you also get snapshots from Harriet and Wynn's relationship, kind of from their first meeting all the way up to the breakup. And the whole time you're thinking, oh my God, they like work so perfectly together. Why on earth did they break up? And then it hits you and it is genuinely heartbreaking. I'm not normally a massive fan of second chance romances, but I feel like this book has kind of converted me to them. I think this book is slightly more grounded in reality than Emily Henry's other books because you get to see this romance play out in real time, in real life, and you know see that happy endings don't very often happen in real life. Things don't always work out perfectly, kind of in the exact way that you want them to. And on paper, Win and Harriet seem perfect for each other. Like they have so much chemistry together, but life gets in the way. Things happen that drive them apart. They have different ambitions, different needs. They want to be in different places in the States. There's a lot going on. And that feels a lot more realistic because very often life does get in the way of things. Things happen at very inconvenient times. And yeah, I also really like seeing kind of the in between scenes between kind of them meeting and them breaking up, like the scenes where they're in an established relationship, which you don't get to see in her other books really, because most of the time the main couple get together in like the last chapter of her other books. But with this one, you do get to see scenes of them like actually being an established couple. And Emily Henry writes those scenes so well. It's like really lovely and domestic and everything. And I loved that part of it, and I kind of wish we could see more of that in her other books, I guess. I think my favorite thing about this book though isn't even the romance. The romance is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. But what I loved even more was the found family element. I'm a sucker for a found family or a chosen family, and this book has it in spades. It's a little family between kind of the six best friends, and there are like lots of different dynamics between each of them. Each of them has like a developed character who goes on a character arc throughout the book. Like they're all very kind of detailed and fleshed out, and they're all pretty different. Like it's a diverse group of friends. And the core three in particular, you have Harriet and you have her best friends Cleo and Sabrina, who like all met because they were roommates in college in first year, and they're like so close, and like they share pretty much everything with each other, except they haven't been recently, which is kind of part of the whole kind of driving issue of the book. But I loved their dynamic so much. I loved how their love for each other was depicted. They're just so devoted to each other, and like even though they very rarely see each other, like Harriet literally lives on the other side of the country to the other two, they meet up and it's like no time has passed at all. And it's just such a lovely depiction of long distance close female friendships. And obviously there are kind of a few conflicts between them throughout the book, but you can understand why those conflicts happen because of their characters, because their characters are so complex in themselves and developed. Like you can understand their actions. And I just love books that have a a a cast of several fully fleshed out three-dimensional characters with proper character arcs throughout the book and like complex dynamics between them. It very rarely happens in the romance books I read. Maybe I'm just reading the wrong romance books, but it happens in this one. I would even argue that this isn't even really a romance. Like there is romance there, but I don't know. It's a love story, but it's just as much a platonic love story as it is a romantic love story. You have the plot between Harriet and Win, but you also have the plot of this entire friendship. It's a book about how a happy place isn't necessarily a place, but it's also the people you love, and wherever they are, that can also be your happy place. Oh, I love this book so much. Originally, the first time I read this, I rated it 4.75 stars. But you know what? fuck it. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. This is my second 5 star read in the entire year out of like the 40 or so books I've read this year. This is 5 star number two. I love this book so much. It just, mm, I would inject it into my bloodstream. I would eat this book if I could. Anyway, I love this book. I think everyone should read it. It's so good. It's certainly different to her other books. For me, I don't think that's a bad thing, but I do understand like other people who love her other books and love kind of that formula that she's created for those other books. That is, it's very kind of your standard rom-com. Like she does that so well. So yeah, I do understand other people who love that kind of stuff that she writes who don't necessarily enjoy this as much because it is quite different. But yeah, I love it. I think we've established that. I think I've said the word love too many times in the last like 10 minutes. So yeah, that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. Mm. So the night is still young. So I'm going to move straight on to Funny Story. This is my final reread before Great Big Beautiful Life comes out. It comes out in like 3 or 4 days, so hopefully I will have finished this book by then. I don't really have any other plans for the weekend, apart from like eating ungodly amounts of chocolate because it is Easter tomorrow. But yeah, I will be eating ungodly amounts of chocolate and also reading this book. So yeah, I will see you on the flip side. Hello. It's late and I have to get up super early tomorrow morning because of reasons. So I'm going to be brief, but I have finished reading Funny Story by Emily Henry, and I'm just now realizing that her name has gotten steadily bigger and bigger on every cover chronologically as they're put out. Her name has grown. I feel like that is very much a marker of success. Eventually, it'll get to a point where her name is actually bigger than the actual title of the book, and I think that is when you know you've made it as an author. In this book, we have our main couple, Daphne and Miles, and they have both been dumped by their partners, who are lifelong best friends and have just now realised that they are in love with each other. Although this realisation has come a little bit late, seeing as Daphne is literally engaged to one of them. And this guy breaks off the engagement and runs off with Miles's girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend. And also he kicks Daphne out of their house, which is fun. So she ends up moving in with Miles because he is now in need of a roommate. And shenanigans ensue. There is fake dating, there is forced proximity, there's a lot going on. Honestly, it's just a fun read. This is a fun book, or at least it is just a fun book up until about the halfway mark, and then it suddenly gets super deep. Both of the protagonists are pretty complex and well developed. Daphne is a type A introvert with daddy issues. Miles is a kind of slight disaster person with mummy issues. They're a match made in heaven. And honestly, they both spend a lot of this book kind of learning that they are enough as people, learning to kind of accept love and also not chase after that love, not kind of go very much out of their way just to be accepted by people in general, usually their parents. We also have a couple of very interesting side characters. We have Daphne's co-worker slash best friend, Ashley, and it was really interesting to see the development of their friendship. It's kind of the first, well, so far the only kind of female best friend in Emily Henry's books that isn't already kind of established as a best friend. You do get to see the kind of the development of their friendship in real time, pretty much, which I thought was very cool. And you also have Miles' sister, Julia, who is very awesome. She is very kind of the way that she's written is very much like how millennials write Gen Z characters, um, but like in a positive way, if you know what I mean. She's like a very kind of classic stereotypical Gen Z, but at the same time, she is still very cool. She's a good character, and I really liked seeing her relationship with Miles kind of written out. They have a kind of complex relationship as siblings. There's a big age gap between them, and they have issues with their parents, but they do love each other a lot, and that's very obvious. I think Emily Henry does write sibling relationships pretty well. You do see that with um, Nora and Libby in Book Lovers, which, as I said, was one of my favourite parts about that entire book. So yeah, I did really like seeing the relationship between Miles and Julia. I do wish that we kind of got to see more of it, especially towards the end. I feel like everything kind of, all of the issues between them are kind of solved off the page and tied up a little bit too cleanly. So yeah, I wish we got to see more. And I also thought that both Daphne and Miles are like complex and flawed. Both of them, like, they both make mistakes. They both make pretty big mistakes that I do kind of find it difficult to properly forgive. I don't really want to go into specifics because I don't want to spoil the book, but they they both make pretty significant mistakes towards each other and towards some of the other characters. But also that does kind of show how flawed they are, like in a good way. Like if they were like completely perfect and made no mistakes, that would be a pretty boring book. So, and speaking of flawed characters, I did feel like, and this was kind of a surprise to me because Emily Henry is so good at creating these very fleshed out three-dimensional characters, even the ones that you don't really like that much. Like, you still kind of understand the things they do. You do somewhat sympathize with them. But I didn't get that with Peter and Petra, who are the two best friends who end up dumping Daphne and Miles and getting together. Yes, they are called Peter and Petra. That should have been my first sign that something was up with them. But yeah, those two characters in particular felt kind of one-dimensional. Like, it felt like they were just kind of cardboard cutout antagonists who were only put on the page to wind up Daphne and Miles and like stir up drama between them. Like, their only job was to come onto the scene like every so often and stir things up and antagonize them rather than them actually being kind of fleshed out characters with other motivations and flaws and, you know, other things going on in their lives, like actual personalities. I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit picky because, there is only so much you can do with a romance book. I'm probably asking a bit too much, but I have high expectations, especially when it comes to Emily Henry, because she does stuff so well. So yeah, I don't know. I felt a little bit let down by that, but overall, I enjoyed this book. I actually did genuinely. I enjoyed it. It was fun until it got really deep, and then it was just heartfelt and sad, but like in an uplifting way. You know, yeah, I would still recommend this, but I don't think it's as good as I thought it was the first time I read it. I think I was probably affected a little bit by recency bias because I did read this pretty much as soon as it came out. So yeah, still good, just not quite as good as I remember it being. So that's it. Those are all of my rereads done. And the only thing now is to see if I can find a copy of Great Big Beautiful Life. It doesn't come out in the UK technically until Thursday. Today is Monday. But it comes out tomorrow in the US. and I don't think it is under embargo because I'm pretty sure that some audiobook listeners already have access to it, which I don't know. I feel like that's a sign. So, my plan is tomorrow I am going up to London very, very early to try and get an audition for a show, which I think is just going to entail me waiting in a very long queue for several hours and probably not end up being seen anyway. But we're going to go anyway for the plot, for the character development. But if I do end up having a little bit of spare time, and I say a little bit of spare time because I do have to get home in the evening fairly rapidly. But if I do end up being seen and I have some spare time, then my plan is to head over to Westfield, big shopping centre. Hopefully, not get lost in Westfield. Try and find their works store there, the works, because I feel like that is the place I am most likely to find a copy of Great Big Beautiful Life. I'm specifically wanting one from the works because A, the Waterstones exclusive edition with the sprayed edges is low-key kind of ugly, and B, it's going to be like half the price of even the normal Waterstones edition. So yeah, I'm going to try and find it at the works. If I don't find it tomorrow, or if I don't have time to even look for it tomorrow, then the plan is probably to see if I can find it before I go to work on Wednesday. Because I am going to a launch party again in London on Wednesday, for the book. No, Emily Henry is not going to be there. That was specified on the event page, and I ended up buying a ticket that didn't include a book, because I knew that it would be cheaper to get like a £5 ticket and then get the book from the works rather than get like a £25 ticket that included a book. You know, it would be like £10 or so cheaper. It's girl math. It's all going on in here. So yeah, hopefully I will be able to find a copy before I go to the launch event. And if I don't, then I will just be relatively sad at the launch event and then end up probably going to the works either before or after work on Thursday, which is like the official release day. And hopefully there will be a copy in my local The Works store. No guarantees because it is a tiny shop. But yeah, hopefully I will find a copy then. It feels like I'm going to have to wait ages to get my hands on a copy, which is sad. But at some point, I will have a copy and I will read it and I will update you. So I will see you when that happens. Hello. So I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is I went to the audition and I waited in a queue, sat on the floor on the concrete pavement for a solid 10.5 hours, and I wasn't seen. I arrived at 7:30 in the morning. I woke up at 5, left the house at 6, got on a train at 6:30, and I got there at 7:30. The auditions weren't starting until 10, and already the queue was around the theatre, around the corner, and then halfway down the street towards the tube station. It was so busy. I think there must have been about, 200 people in front of me. And I think the queue was like 600 people long by the time it hit 10 o'clock. So, yeah. I sat in the queue, managed to get pretty far. I managed to get like just around the corner to like the doors of the theatre. I was able to look inside the theatre and see the people waiting to audition in the lobby. I was just kind of a little kind of Victorian orphan staring through the window and wishing that I was in the nice warm lobby waiting to sing. But alas, that is just the reality of performing. It's especially the reality of doing a performing arts job and not being based in London, and having to get the train into London, which, already takes a long time. Whereas people who do live in London are at an advantage because, it like you can get places so much faster. The transport network in London is brilliant. But yeah, it just sucks for the rest of us who cannot afford to live in London. But yeah, I ended up sticking around even when it became clear that I wasn't going to be seen. I stuck around until 6 p.m. and I handed in my CV. So, provided that CV doesn't go straight in the bin, I might get an email asking me to come in. Doubtful, but yeah. I don't think anyone who is watching this video cares about any of this. You're just here for the books, but like, it's just stuff that goes on in my life. So yeah, that is the bad news. And also, it did mean, because I stuck around until 6, that I didn't end up going to Westfield and trying to find a copy of Great Big Beautiful Life, which actually kind of was good in the long run because I went to the works just on my way to work this afternoon, and I found out that not only are the works selling hardbacks of Great Big Beautiful Life for £15, which is almost the price that they are selling them at Waterstones, but they're also selling them with bright purple sprayed edges. Absolutely diabolical. Like, they have this reversible dust jacket, and on the one side you have like the normal cover, which is like orange, red and orange, and you know, the normal cover. But on the reverse, they have a different design, a different colorway with like pinks and purples, which is nice, but you kind of have to have that design if you're going to read it because the bright purple does not go with the normal cover. It really doesn't. It's almost as bad as the paperbacks of Funny Story they're selling with the like bluish purple, like indigo sprayed edges, which I don't know why they chose that color. It does not go with the cover at all. This epidemic of spredges is really starting to frustrate me because also I was just kind of searching like the Waterstones app for like normal standard copies of Great Big Beautiful Life, and they don't seem to be selling them in the shop. You actually have to actively order the standard edition online in order to get it. They're the only ones they're selling are the ones with the sprayed edges, which I feel like that is just a real clear sign that this epidemic of spredges has gone too far. Like, it's okay to release a normal book. It's okay to have a book, even a highly anticipated book from a New York Times best-selling author that doesn't have sprayed edges. It's fine. So yeah, that's my rant. In other completely unrelated news, I got a copy of Brave and Beautiful Life with Spredges today. I just decided to pick one up at Waterstones Trafalgar Square on my way to Waterstones Piccadilly this afternoon because I was not going to spend £15 on a hardback with ugly sprayed edges that don't go with the front cover. And I was also not going to wait like 5 days for a copy of the book to be ordered from the Waterstones website and for that copy to potentially get damaged in the post because I feel like Waterstones need to kind of improve their packaging, especially of like special edition hardbacks. And ideally, I would like them to improve their packaging in the near future because I do have a lot of pre-orders coming, and a lot of them are special editions. And I was absolutely not going to order the book from Amazon, even if it was able to arrive tomorrow. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, I got myself a copy. Went to the launch event. The launch event was brilliant. It was a lot of fun. I was not the only person there who came by myself. We need to normalize going on trips by yourself, taking yourself on solo dates. We need to normalize it. There were some lovely people that I met who also came by themselves, and we got chatting, and they were all very nice, very friendly. It was just a very nice atmosphere. So I went to the launch event. The launch event was happening in the bar in the basement of Piccadilly Waterstones, kind of opposite the space where they currently have the Booker Library. Um, Opposite that, down the stairs, there's a bar there. They had taken out a lot of furniture, replaced it with deck chairs. It was all very kind of nice atmosphere. They had signs and stuff. Um, some of the booksellers were going around taking Polaroid pictures of us, holding copies of the book and stuff. There was a bar there with mocktails, and there was of course a goodie bag. So I got a little bag with a quote from the book. So you got the guy on one side, and you have the girl on the other side, which is very nice. And then I also got a pin badge that says "This Great Big Beautiful Life," and we got a little friendship bracelet making kit with beads and stuff. And I ended up making a friendship bracelet when I was there. Looks like this. Very cute. These are little turtle beads. And then I didn't get the book in the goodie bag, obviously, but a few things in here I just kind of used to keep safe. Got a bookmark, which I was using to hold the page, but it's gone now. Got a little postcard. This is a reference to the beach house in Happy Place, Knott's Harbour in Maine. Cute little postcard there. People were getting different ones, different references to places in all of Emily Henry's books. One of the girls I was with got one for You and Me on Vacation, which was her favorite book, which was very nice. But yeah, Happy Place is my favorite, at least so far. So I was very pleased that I got that one. And we also got a little photo together on Polaroid. Oh, and I also got a takeout reusable cup as well, because I was one of the first people in the queue and they had a limited supply, and I got the last one. I was so pleased, so pleased with myself. But I can't show you it because I have washed up and it is by the sink drying. But yeah, it was really cute. Lots of chatting, some friendship bracelet making. Did I say that we had a video of Emily Henry reading a section from the book? I honestly I don't know. But yeah, we had a video of Emily Henry reading from the book. Oh, and I also picked up a signed copy of There Is in the Sky to match my signed copy of The Island of Missing Trees, because I've been eyeing up this book for a while, and yeah, I'm probably not going to read it for months, but I will read it eventually, and it's nice to have a signed copy. But yeah, that's it. That is my life update. I started reading Great Big Beautiful Life on the train on the way home. I'm 3 chapters in so far. You can tell that it's pretty different to her other books. Just in terms of the genre and the subject matter. But there's still kind of the same level of dialogue, the same kind of writing style, the same kind of character dynamics, really. So far, I mean, it's still very early days yet, but that is the vibe that I'm getting, and yeah, I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm gonna keep reading. That's all. I have just finished reading Great Big Beautiful Life, Emily Henry's new book that was just released, and I have some thoughts. Overall, I really enjoyed it. It didn't surpass Happy Place for me, but that's okay because I wasn't expecting it to surpass Happy Place. I don't think any romance book ever will surpass Happy Place in my mind and my heart. Great Big Beautiful Life follows 2 authors, 2 kind of non-fiction biographers slash journalists who are called Alice, who's the narrator, and Hayden, who is a pretty guarded and grumpy character. Um, Potentially a little bit stuck up. He has just won a Pulitzer Prize for his most recent book, whereas Alice mostly works for a magazine, doing profiles for various slightly smaller celebrities. And the two of them are both competing for a book deal, for writing this memoir for a very reclusive um, heiress who was kind of nicknamed the tabloid princess back in like the whenever it was 50s, 60s, 70s. Um, and then had a string of really awful things happen to her. And then she eventually disappeared for like 20 years. And she hasn't really come out of hiding. She's still very much in hiding on this very small island in Georgia. But um, she is thinking about writing a biography or having someone write a biography for her. And so she lets Alice and Hayden both stay on the island and interview her for a month and try and get this book deal, try and get an arrangement that they would essentially write the book of a lifetime for both of them. It's like a massive job because there are a lot of kind of conspiracies and stuff surrounding this person. She's very mysterious. Like, this is a life changing job opportunity, and they both want it so much. So, as a result, there's quite a bit of rivalry between them, but there is also a little bit of attraction as well. So we have two storylines, two timelines happening in this book. You have the present day story, which is about Alice interviewing Margaret, who is this elderly heiress, and it becomes very clear that like Margaret is hiding stuff from her, and she's also hiding stuff from Hayden, and they can't talk to each other about it because they have massive NDAs. So, yeah, it does make Alice's job pretty difficult trying to write a book when subject of said book is keeping a lot of quite juicy secrets from her. And then alongside all of the writing and the interviewing, you also have the this kind of romance happening between Alice and Hayden. And then you also have the past storyline, which talks about not only Margaret's life, but all of the generations that kind of came before her. She's part of this massive kind of family line of very wealthy and powerful um, people in media. So she was very much born into the spotlight. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of complicated family dynamics and generational trauma in there. And yeah, there are secrets and there are twists and all of kind of the puzzle pieces kind of come together at the end, and it's I wouldn't necessarily say unexpected because I feel like I probably could have predicted some of the plot twists. But it was definitely satisfying, I felt, when everything came together and you kind of got the big picture. This book is very much the love child of Beach Read and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is very, very Evelyn Hugo, like the whole kind of Hollywood starlet type thing, finally revealing all of her secrets. Some of them hitting a little bit close to home. The whole thing about living your entire life under the spotlight and not being able to distinguish like your true identity with the identity created for you by the press. There's a lot of that discussion in there and the emotional toll that takes not just on Margaret but on members of her family and the people she loves. And then you also have the beach read side of it. I did feel like Alice and Hayden were kind of slightly more grown up versions of January and Gus from Beach Read. Like, they're all authors, even though January and Gus are fiction authors and Alice and Hayden are non-fiction authors. They're both kind of, yeah, rival authors who are competing in some aspect or other. Um, Both Alice and January have kind of complicated relationships with their mother and they're grieving their father. There's a whole kind of grumpy sunshine dynamic between them as well. Um, Yeah, there were a lot of similarities. I personally feel like they were a little bit too similar. Like the romance aspect of this book felt a little bit too much like a carbon copy of Beach Read. Which I mean, if it ain't broke, but still, I also felt like the romance could have just been paced a lot slower. I was really hoping for more of a slow burn romance, especially like having read the first couple of interactions between them. I really, really wanted it to be more of a slow burn, have more kind of pining and stuff before they got together. Just even to like balance out the relatively more fast paced past timeline with Margaret telling her entire like bloodlines story. That part of it is pretty fast paced, and yeah, I wish the romance was just slower. I feel like that could have maybe made Alice and Hayden have a bit more chemistry. I definitely wouldn't have traded Margaret's story with anything, but I felt like the inclusion of Margaret's story and all of the kind of twists and secrets that came with that kind of detracted from the romance between Alice and Hayden. You know, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. This book is already pretty long. It is Emily Henry's longest book. It comes in at over 400 pages. So, yeah, I feel like sacrifices had to be made, but I don't know. I wish that there was a bit more chemistry, at least between Alice and Hayden. But, you know, there are still a lot of kind of classic Emily Henry isms, like stuff that she puts in all of her books that she puts in this book as well that I still enjoyed. Like there is a lot of really nice banter, very fun banter between Alice and Hayden. Kind of wish there was more of it. I liked the kind of exploration of Alice's relationships with her parents, her grief for her father, and her slightly more complicated relationship with her mother, who doesn't really understand her career as a writer. Um, and yeah, there's a little bit of tension there. Again, kind of wish there was a little bit more of the exploration of Alice's grief journey. That was something that I really liked about Beach Read and January's grief for her father, and that was kind of explored very fully. That I felt was somewhat lacking in this book as well. Again, wish there was more of it. I liked the kind of colourful cast of the locals of Crescent Island, which is the small island that Margaret lives on. That again, Emily Henry does setting really well, kind of the small town aspect. And there are some really fun characters that make an appearance. Um, what else? Um, Alice's friendships back home, like she's on a group chat with a few of her co-workers, who are all, you know, they're fun characters. They don't have a lot of like substance to them particularly. They're just kind of there to support Alice. But I actually felt like that was a good thing for this book because I don't know, maybe the introduction of too many very, very detailed characters would potentially distract from the rest of the plot. So that's a sacrifice that I was willing to make for this. But yeah, their texts and their support via the group chat was also fun to read. They do make an appearance towards the end, like in person, and I liked reading that scene. And also, I just liked Alice and Hayden as individual characters. I don't really have anything against them. The main thing I noticed with Alice is just how kind she is. Um, like with regards to um her interviewing Margaret, even through some like very kind of dark and sensitive issues, just how empathetic she is and understanding. Even like when she's kind of pushing for more information, she does it in a very kind of kind and understanding way. And yeah, that was something I really noticed. And yeah, Hayden is just your kind of standard grumpy but gentle giant. Like he has a lot of barriers, but you know, he also has very much a heart of gold underneath all of those barriers. So yeah, as individuals, I did like them, but I felt like their romance was kind of rushed, especially towards the end. I felt like the whole kind of resolution of their relationship was yeah, just rushed quite a bit, which is a shame because, this is at the end of the day a romance book. So, yeah, similarly with book lovers, I feel like if the romance itself isn't that compelling, that does kind of, you have to deduct a few points for that, no matter how great the rest of the book is. So, yeah, it does sound like I have a lot of complaints about this book, but I did really enjoy it. I whizzed through it in about 3 days. Um, I didn't really want to put it down because the plot was really interesting. I liked all the twists and stuff. I wanted to find out what was happening, how all of the kind of little tidbits of information fit together. Um, so yeah, I enjoyed it. It is definitely well written and it's definitely worth reading. It's very different to the rest of Emily Henry's books. Even like Happy Place, which in itself is a little bit of a departure from like the standard rom-com formula. This is even more of a departure. So don't go into it expecting kind of your normal Emily Henry book. Go into it with a very much an open mind and hopefully you won't be disappointed. Hello, welcome. We are filming on location, and that location is the only place in my house at the moment that has a blank ish wall I can use, which just so happens to be my sister's bedroom. Anyway, hello. Welcome. You may notice this little pyramid of post it notes I've got going on here. That's right, it's time for a ranking. And we are doing a pyramid scheme. Pyramid scheme? No, that's a completely different thing entirely. We are doing it the Dance Mums way. That's right, I am actually Abby Lee Miller. This is the pyramid we are using to rank all of the Emily Henry books because I have now read all of them and I have taken several weeks to come up with this ranking because it keeps changing in my mind, the order of the books. But I think I'm set on one now. I just want to add a couple of disclaimers before we get started, um, because I feel like this is going to be potentially slightly controversial, my ranking. But firstly, um, this is all entirely subjective. So if you disagree with my ranking, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. But this is my opinion. And secondly, just because a book is on the bottom of this pyramid doesn't mean that it's not good. I love Emily Henry. I love her books. I think all of them are great. It's just which one is the least great to me. I don't know, something has to be in the bottom. That is the way rankings go. That's just the way things are. So, yeah, we're going to make a start now. And on the bottom of this pyramid, in unfortunately sixth place, is. There's nothing on this post-it note. It is Book Lovers. I know, I can hear you all gasp. It seems like everyone absolutely loves Book Lovers, and it is a good book. I did really enjoy it. I love Nora and Charlie as individual characters. I think Nora is my favorite female main character in any Emily Henry book. It is just such a shame that I didn't find their romance that compelling. To me, if you're going to market something as like a rivals to lovers or an enemies to lovers, they actually need to be enemies. Like convincingly, they need to like hate each other. It doesn't need to be just like a one-sided grudge over a minor disagreement that happened years ago that seemed to disappear very quickly. And for a romance book to be good, it actually does need to have like a convincing romance from the beginning. As soon as I got like 50% in, I was hooked because that was kind of when the chemistry between Nora and Charlie started. But up until that point, I struggled. I'm sorry. Moving on, in fifth place, we have Great Big Beautiful Life. This has a similar problem to Book Lovers in that for a romance book, I didn't find the romance all that convincing. I feel like Alice and Hayden kind of lacked a bit of chemistry. Again, there was a lot to love. I enjoyed the storyline. I really liked all the kind of secrets that Margaret reveals and all of the plot twists and puzzle pieces that fit together. It's very satisfying once you get to the end, but I felt like all of that came at the expense of losing the chemistry between the main couple, which I was quite sad about. In fourth place, we have Beach Read. This was a really solid first foray into adult romance. There were a lot of really kind of deep topics covered. I felt like both characters had a lot of development as individuals, and I liked the romance as well with them together. Like the banter was fantastic, but I do still have some reasonable sized issues with it, which I talked about in my review before, so I'm not going to go over them again. But yeah, it was a solid book. I liked it. In third place, we have You and Me on Vacation. This was my introduction to Emily Henry like 2 years ago, and to be honest, it held up pretty well upon rereading it. I really liked the concept of it. I thought the execution was very good. Um, I really liked the kind of slow burn friends and lovers romance between Poppy and Alex. I did just find Poppy as a character a little bit annoying, and I also found it lacking a little bit on the female friendship front. So we are down to our final two. I feel like you can probably tell which is which, but just in case you can't, in second place, Funny Story. I thought this struck a really good balance of being both a fun, tropey rom com and also having some more serious themes as well. Like both characters are fully fleshed out, they're flawed, they go on a full journey throughout the book. And, they also have good chemistry together. Like, I really liked the fact that they're best friends as well as being romantically involved. Like they do have a great rapport with each other. And I also really liked some of the supporting characters. I didn't like all of them. I had my issues with some of them, but some of them were brilliant. And so finally, taking our top spot at the top of the pyramid, no prizes for guessing which one this is, but it is, of course, Happy Place. Enough said. This book is my happy place. I love it so much. So, yeah, that's it. That's my ranking, and that's this video done. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you have gotten to the end of this video and enjoyed my yapping about romance books for probably well over an hour by now. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, the Storygraph, Blue Sky. My username on all those platforms is @WidlivJones if you want even more bookish content. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!